All right, ladies and gentlemen, in say about 10 minutes from now, we'll be starting with the next session. All those who are standing, humble request to please be seated. I hope you're enjoying your dessert. The lunch and dessert has been brought to you by Tata Capital and Rockman Industries. Thank you. Two things not to forget, ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't dropped in your visiting card into the fishbowl, where we are conducting a special lucky draw. At the end of the day, you will find something very fabulous as a prize to one lucky winner. And also there are feedback forms that need to be filled. We have our team members who will come and collect them shortly. So do fill them up. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in a few moments we'll be starting with a session. So in case you're on dessert, another 5 odd minutes and we're good to go then. Ladies and gentlemen, another 5 to 7 minutes and we'll be starting with our next session. If you haven't finished your lunch, kindly do so. A humble request. Please switch off your handsets or put them in silent mode. We're about to resume in another 5 minutes or so. The lunch was brought to you by Tata Capital and Rockman Industries. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start in the next 2 minutes. All those standing to please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, all those standing, a humble request to please be seated. We're starting with our next session. Before we start with the session, one simple request while the discussions are going on, in case you need to discuss something, you can exit for a few moments, do your talk, and then join us back. The decorum of the summit needs to be maintained, silence needs to be maintained. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome with a thunderous round of applause our chief guest for this session, Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Minister of Jal Shakti, Government of India. Can we have a round of applause, sir? Welcome, sir. Mr. Pranav Bhanage, Chief Executive Officer, Petronas, Mr. Anish Dey, Partner and Head Energy and Natural Resources, KPMG, Ms. Naina Lal Kidwai, Director, Narara Energy Limited and Chairperson, Max Financial Services. And as our moderator, we have Dr. Ron Malka, Ambassador, Israel. Can we have a round of applause for our esteemed group of panelists? The session is Energy and Water Stress. Where does India go from here? The session is sponsored by Petronas. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to have a very interesting session about water and energy, two twin challenges that go together alongside, because when we want to generate power, energy, we need fresh water. When we want to get more fresh water, if we want to desalinate or recycle water, we need a lot of energy. So these two challenges go together, and what we'll try to do today is to think what steps we should take, in what pace and in what scale, in order to narrow the gap between the sources and the users, this gap between demand and supply. I can tell you, just as a beginning, and then I'll transfer to my distinguished guests here, partners in the panel, that Israel, as far as water is concerned, started for a very low starting point. Israel mostly desert, 60% desert, and the rest is semi-arid area. Mostly with about 100 millimeters annual rainfall, and now has abundance of water. We gained full control over the water issue, although since independence 72 years ago, the rainfall dropped by more than half due to climate changes, and the population grew 15 times since independence. Still, Israel now has, as I said, abundance of water and also export water to our neighbors in order to ease the water stress in the region. So what we'll try to do now is to see how we can harness the technology, the methods, the experience that Israel is keen to share with its precious partner here in India, and to take the right steps in order to ease the water stress. As I said, water is engaged with energy, so we'll talk about this too, try to understand what will be the optimistic equilibrium between these two. So I'd like, please, to start with the Minister of Jal Shakti, His Excellency. Please, if you can just tell us what India should do now. What steps, please?
Thank you, Ron Malka. When I was just joining before coming on the dais, and we met outside in the lounge, my first comment was, when a person from Israel is there sharing your dais, no one has an authority to speak on water. As Mr. Ron Malka introduced himself, Israel is a country, nation, which is a role model as far as the water. They are role model for other things also, but they are a role model for rest of the world as far as the water is concerned. See, a country like Israel, which has only 100 millimeter average rainfall, and almost entire country is arid or semi-arid or a desert, that has converted itself into the vegetable and fruit bowl for entire Europe, if I'm not wrong. And they have abundance of water. I do remember when Ben Gurion, he was addressing the scientists and the engineers of the nation soon after the independence. He said, if you wish to find out a solution for water security for the nation, then you'll have to find that solution in desert. And the scientist, I'm forgetting the name, they went to the desert, Negev desert, and they found there is a tree which was growing exceptionally high. And small droplets of water was coming through a source there. They could found the drip irrigation method there. And in 1962, the country adapted drip irrigation system. And now entire world is transferring towards that. So if we have to speak about water, and we have to learn to achieve the water security from the success stories from the Israel or any other country, the country like Cambodia, which has attained the water security, the very poor country, but there are only 4 pillars. First, conservation of water. See, in India, we are having 4,000 billion cubic meter rainfall every year. And as His Excellency Malka was saying, that in his country, the population rose 15 times. Thank God that in India, it is still 4 times. But at the time of independence, we were having almost 5,000 cubic meters water per capita, which has shrunk now below 1,700, which is water stressed condition. That is, now we are at 1500 cubic meters per capita. So water conservation in a country like India, where 4,000 BCM is the rainfall, or the precipitation, total water which comes as a snowfall or the rain, our total harvesting capacity over the ground is only 8%. Right from the biggest reservoir, largest dam, to the smallest dam, it is 250 billion cubic meter. And if I include all the storages throughout the country, the smallest, the ponds in the villages, still it is less than 300 BCM. So we are able to harvest only 10%. And the biggest reservoir, I was just talking to my colleagues, my colleagues at the parliament, a couple of days ago when parliament was in session. I just checked with them which is the biggest reservoir in the nation. Everybody stated some of the big, larger dams. I said, no, the dams are not the largest reservoir. Our Mother Earth is the biggest reservoir. We are getting almost 458 billion cubic meter water every year. That too is replenishable from the underground water sources. And we are drawing almost more than 700 billion cubic meter waters. So that gap, and since we are depending 85%, our dependence is almost 85% as far as the rural requirement is concerned, is depending upon the underground water. And if I calculate in total, then it is somewhere around 65% for our irrigation, industry, and drinking water purpose. And other purposes, 65% we are depending upon the underground water. And the huge gap is there between the total replenishment and the withdrawal. So water conservation is one pillar on which we will have to work. And I'm so thankful that our visionary leader, Honorable Narendra Modi ji, he has come up with a program. First was the integration of ministry, the water which was being addressed under various roofs, under various ministries, under various hats. Now it has been integrated in one ministry, and I'm fortunate enough that that work has been assigned to me. After water conservation, the second thing is judicious use of water. Judicious use, whatever the water is being used, whether it is in home or in industry or in the agriculture. And agriculture being the largest stakeholder, largest consumer, the total 89% of the total water. Whenever we have a chance to speak about conservation or judicious use of water, we start from, oh, hey, ladies, stop having shampoo every day. Start shampooing once a week. Or start using bucket in spite of the showers. Or, gentlemen, just switch off turn the taps off when you are brushing or shaving. But still, that matters. But ultimately, we'll have to think of that agriculture, which is the biggest consumer. And our waters are the least productive waters in the earth. We are consuming almost 5,600 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of rice. Whereas China is producing a kilogram of paddy for 356 liters of water. So there's a huge gap. We'll have to think of that. So our Prime Minister, he started the scheme, per drop, more crop. Each and every drop counts. And we have come up with a large program for transferring our farmers from the flood irrigation system to the micro irrigation system, and a huge sum of land that has been transferred. And the third thing, after the judicious use of water, is the reuse of water. Israel is again a pioneer in that field. They are almost using 82% of their water which has been excreted from the domestic homes or the industries. See, I was just going through a document, a book, or rather I should say it was a study report. They said that ideal situation should be the treated water should flow in the canals. for use in the industry or for the agriculture purposes. And the fresh water should flow in the rivers. Whereas throughout the world, not only in our country, throughout the world, the fresh water is being used into agriculture, and untreated sewage or the effluents, they are being disposed of or terminated in the rivers. So this is, and water, as Mr. Ron Walka was saying, it is water and energy generation or power generation is integrated. What I say, water and word is integrated. You cannot think of life without water. And the way the world is heading and the sources of water are shrinking throughout the world. See, energy we can transfer easily, and India is a pioneer and a leader on that. We can go and easily switch on the renewable sources of energy. We can use sun for the energy, but for water, how we will get it? And the desalination is not going to solve the problem, because everywhere in the world there is no sea. So we'll have to think of it and start conserving water, judicious use of water, reuse of water, and then rejuvenation of old water structures, what we have lost. Thousands of water bodies. The gentleman sitting on the dais and the gentleman sitting in this auditorium might have seen in their life, the people older than me, that there used to be a river here. Come on, I'm talking because I'm talking in an audience which is with the leaders of the industry. Let us start let us pledge ourselves for, as Honorable Prime Minister have taken a call, a Jal Shakti Abhiyan has been initiated. 256 districts have been identified, where the 1,500 most critical blocks are there. Under those blocks, we are identifying and working on multiple approach. The senior officers from working in the government of India have been sent there, and they have been made as a nodal officer for those districts to identify the problem, to identify the solution, to create a Jan Andolan, the people's movement, to address that issue. I hail all of you sitting here. Please come together. Identify a work for yourself. Whether it is rejuvenation of a river, whether it is rejuvenation of a traditional water body, traditional source, or all the rejuvenation activities which can be for the tributaries of a river, that is going to secure us, our nation. See, the God or the nature, still it is so kind on us, all of us, especially if I speak about our country. We are getting 4,000 BCM of water. If we are able to tap and use it judiciously, our generations can survive. With this, though we are the most vulnerable as far as the climate change is concerned, impact of climate change is concerned, the time of the rain, the spell of the rain, which used to be earlier in 4 months, it has shrunk now to almost 30, 40 days. And the incidences of cloud bursting, they are increasing. The rain time, the rain pattern, the scanty and erratic rain pattern, what we are seeing. The government is doing its work, but still, we will also, the society will also have to come together, and each and every person on the earth will have to come together. Then only we can save our generation from this challenge which is emerging in front of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shekhar. As you well stated, it's really a comprehensive approach on the side of the resources and sources, enhancing the sources, and managing efficiently the uses. Mrs. Kidway, please, if you can just make this distinction between what we should do in the sources part of the equation and what we should do in the uses part of the equation, please.
A big subject and a tough one to follow the minister with what he has laid out before us, and you, Your Excellency. So I would like to really look at this as the water, energy, and food nexus. And in terms of sources, clearly agriculture, as rightly defined by the minister, is the biggest user, 89%. So what we grow, rice in water-starved areas of the north, which were traditionally wheat, and then we export basmati full of that water to other parts of the world. And on the other, what we eat, which also impacts what we grow, and indeed the climate change that was mentioned as well. So the food, water, and energy nexus have to be looked at in totality. But looking at sources, and one of the spaces I work in is as chair of the FICCI Water Mission, that we are very focused right now on water efficiency for industry. Small user compared to agriculture, but still a critical user, and one which has to look at the way it uses water, both inside the factory, but also outside the fence. So what we call water stewardship. And the role of industry to minimize this water use and make water available to the communities around where it functions is purely in self-interest, but critical for ensuring that communities don't rebel against that use of water which the plant needs. And with it comes technology, efficiency, and ways of actually tackling water use by industry. And I think a very important element therein. A related space on the source of water would also be the pricing of water. We were discussing this earlier as well. How do we price for this water? And what we are also working on is the price for wastewater. We treat water only to throw it into drains and back into polluted rivers, so it just mixes in there, as against reuse in a power plant, which Nagpur has now done. It's directed its wastewater into a power plant, or wastewater, if I'm treating water at the Resident Welfare Association level, back into horticulture or into agriculture. So the circular economy, as it comes from treated water, which has uses, instead of just chucking it away, and how we price for water at each stage, including wastewater, becomes another way to ensure that we protect ourselves from misuse on the one hand, which is to ensure that water is properly treated, as in sewage gets properly treated, and then the price for it helps to pay for the treatment of that sewage, because otherwise that sewage goes back to pollute the river, which you're trying to keep clean, exactly as the minister said in the first place. So the solutions actually are staring us in the face. We don't need a space scientist to sort this one out. The issue has really been that it has been so disconnected as we looked at each vertical for itself rather than solve for the problem as a whole, that we now have to break through mafias, vested interests, and find our way through a maze of issues, whereas the solution is staring us in the face, but executing on the solution is proving difficult. And I would just end by saying that none of this is possible without money and finance. And for money and finance, we need an ecosystem which works, a legal system which understands the sanctity of contracts, so that we do not see what happened in renewable energy right now, where tariffs agreed upon are renegotiated again and again. And in that ecosystem, the legal structure, sanctity of contract, proper pricing, and citizens who pay at the right points will all become critical.
Thank you so much. And talking about efficiency, I'll start with Mr. There. What should we do in order to build the right structure of incentives in order to be more effective and efficient in using water and energy, please?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Makka, and a pleasure to be here. I think I'll pick up with what Nana said about pricing. And we need a lot more pricing innovation to signal to efficiency. The problem which we have in India in particular is that we have treated water as an entitlement. Everybody treats it as an entitlement. It's not just the agricultural user or domestic user. Even a power plant treats the water allocated as a free entitlement or a very nominally priced entitlement. Hence there's no incentive or there's no signal to conserve water, reuse water. And I think that's where we need to first start. Since in aligning to the topic, which is on the energy-water nexus, I think if we look at, apart from agriculture, one of the biggest users of water is in power plants. the thermal power plants, and India is about 60–70% of India's power comes from thermal power plants. And we've seen a whole lot of unproductive use or wasteful use in power plants. We used to have till 1999, till 2000, we have built power plants with open loop systems. Okay, so when you build a power plant with open loop system, you actually are using about 7 to 8 times the water as a closed loop system. We've since banned it, but even then, the amount of water we use in our power plants, thermal power plants, is very, very high. So we need to, kind of draw out every drop of efficiency from that process to make sure that our usage is going further down. And there are alternate technologies which are available to signal to do that. But for that, we first need to signal through pricing innovation. The question which will come is that if you price water much higher than what it is currently, then you're going to raise the cost of water, raise the cost of power. To that, my counter would be that there is some money which is going to get collected, get back to the ratepayer, find an alternate mechanism where whatever is being charged for the thermal power generation in the area of water cost gets fed back to the ratepayer to reduce the rates. But at least you're using the resource productively, because what happens otherwise is that you are artificially reducing the cost of thermal power generation, but not pricing the water. And I think this is where we need to bring a much more comprehensive thinking into this process. First step is to look at what is the right price of that resource which we should be paying, and going away from the theme of entitlement, which including the public sector, which has a theme of entitlement or a feeling of entitlement, to something which is something which they're obligated to do better. Related to that is consciousness. I think as we have Jal Shakti Ministry and Honorable Minister is in charge of that ministry, that's a great step, because apart from everything, you signal to consciousness, human consciousness, by bringing the two together, bringing all these themes together, giving it the importance which it deserves. I think I'm seeing a lot of that, so I'm a little more positive about it than I would have been a few months back. There is a group of secretaries which has been set up by government. There are 10 groups of secretaries which have been set up by government. The group I was recently assisting and continue to assist is the resources group. And one of the biggest things which started, among the recommendations which the group has been making and is evolving, the first thing starts with sustainability. And within sustainability, focusing on recycling of every kind of commodity, metals, water, the whole circular economy being the central theme of all of that has become a big, big thrust. This wasn't the case earlier. The petroleum ministry or the coal ministry never used to think of sustainability earlier and water earlier. Today, it's a part of every scheme which they have. I think that's a very, very encouraging thing to me. And I'm looking forward to this kind of becoming a movement, as the Honorable Minister said. If it becomes movement at the grassroots, and it becomes a movement at the corporates, and it becomes a movement at the policy-making level, then I think it's going to be a great move forward. But I come back to, again, the fact that we first need to send the commercial signals also, or the policy signals, to make sure that actually this whole theme of consciousness actually translates to practical applications on the ground.
Thank you so much. Arnav, what can we do? How creative can we be? What alternatives, energies can we use in order to narrow the gap between the supply and demand? For example, I can tell you that in Israel, we go agriculture in the desert. So in the desert, we don't have available energy. So we use the solar energy in order to enable the drip irrigation, because it needs some level of pressure. So we use solar energies. What are the new alternatives that you can suggest in order to mitigate this challenge, please?
I think I would, before I go specifically to that question, I think I would like to just take a step back here. And if you look at the evolution of humankind, I think our prehistoric ancestors, we used to fear nature. So nature was a natural barrier, it was a natural support, and we always bowed in front of nature. Now, where we evolved from there, and when we reached to the industrial age about 100, 150 years ago, the entire human race started to think that, hey, we can overcome nature. So nature is no longer a barrier. If there was Alps or Himalayas, I can take a flight and go across. So we started to take nature for granted, and we start to use resources the way we think they're abundant. We think we can overcome any natural bridges. I mean, the bridges are built. I think the China bridge, which connects like Hong Kong to Macau, and all these kind of engineering marvels that happen. So I think positively, I think we are coming to this phase now in the last, and it's gathering momentum over the last 4 or 5 years from a corporate side, and also I think I see it from the government side as well, is that now we're coming back to that stage where, hey, I think nature can overpower us. I think we need to really figure out that we are in a constrained environment, and therefore it should we need to change a little bit on our thinking on how we want to approach this challenge that we have. So I am at a very broad level, I am very glad that there is a momentum towards that belief, because with that belief, and I think something like Jal Shakti and all is sort of outcomes of those, and we should be looking to a more positive way forward. Now, specifically, I think if you look at energy as coming in as an enabler, I always look at it in form of the value chain. I think if you look at the value chain of energy consumption, you have starting with the needs, the manufacturing or sourcing, distribution, and then the eventual consumption at the end points. Unfortunately, what gathers momentum and what you see a lot out in the media, press, people clamoring on social media, is the end point of the value chain. Somebody kept the light on for a long time, and then you start saying that he or she is not very energy conscious. I think I would like to look at energy in a more value chain basis, and therefore you start looking at solutions which make sense across the value chain. So arranging debate, again, to sort of make this point, is that electric vehicles. There was we talked about in the morning about how EV revolution is coming in, but what is the well-to-wheel output of this electric evolution? I'm not too sure. If you're going to use coal-powered power plants to actually produce that electricity and then have a clean, so-called nice little Tesla in the confines of Delhi, I don't think we are actually adding value to the environment. You're probably degrading it. And diesel is probably better. That will be the counter argument to it. So from an energy perspective, again, coming back to your question, Ron, in terms of what can be done, I think there are 2 or 3 clear pathways. If you take a more philosophical approach to it, I think solar starts to become the sort of thing that we can take on. And there is a very interesting sort of micro research which is happening on solar, is that do we tap the solar resources on Earth, or is there a way to tap solar resources outside our planet and bring that power back to the planet? So solar sometimes starts becoming a de facto sort of position that a lot of us want to look at as looking at solutions. Then it sort of moves into the space of within hydrocarbon space, having a little bit of cleaner spaces like LNG or compressed natural gas kind of areas, which also sort of reduce your total carbon footprint. But moving forward, I think, I see a world moving towards more natural resources in terms of looking at solar as a big sort of driver for energy needs of our Earth in future.
Thank you so much. And I would like to conclude with a very optimistic note. As I said, Israel is a good example that it's solvable. It can be achieved. We can really mitigate these challenges and narrow the gap. And as I said, Israel is very keen to share its experience, its know-how with our precious friend here in India. And since the wheel is there, we don't need to reinvent it. We just need to make the adjustments, because we understand that India is much, much, much bigger than Israel, much, much complicated. So it's a bigger challenge. But still, we can just harness the technology, the know-hows, the methods the proven concept and just bring it here and just implement after doing the needed adjustments. And I'm very optimistic in it. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would request you to please stay back for a few moments. Right, ladies and gentlemen, now we move on to the question. Can we have the question, please? Water will become the new oil in 2040. You have your voting pads on. Option A, if you agree, B, if you disagree, and C, can't say. 30 seconds is what you have. A few more seconds and I guess the answer will be revealed instantly. Water will become the new oil in 2040. There you go. 71.6% agrees, 19.75 disagree, and 8.64 can't say anything about it. With that, we come to the end of the session. I would request Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, sir, to kindly grace the dais and present a memento from our side to our esteemed group of panelists. Can we have a round of applause? First and foremost, our chief guest. Sir.
Yeah, please. I have a question from the people who have voted for no's. That what do you think that it is beyond 40 or before 40? Because as far as my wit is concerned, the tipping point is very close than to 2040. I don't know the people who have voted for against 2040 with the no's in the question, what they have in their mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, can we have a round of applause for our chief guest for the session, Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Minister of Jal Shakti, Government of India. Thank you, sir, for giving us your precious time. We can do much better. Let's have a huge round of applause for sir. Sunil, sir. We go with Mr. Day, Mr. Anish Day. Can we have, let's keep the energy going. This was quite an interesting session. As Shekhawat sir is saying, it's all thanks to our moderator who completed the whole session in time, and we still have time to go. So thank you, sir. Thanks a ton. All right. Kindly bear with us. Just 2 minutes to reset for the next session. Thank you, sir.